Are we live?
We're live.
Hey, good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special edition of CBTV. It's a special... I put my teeth back in and start again. It's a special edition because of some of the recent announcements that have taken place, mainly in Wales over the last couple of days, but also some announcements in England as well relating to the lockdown restrictions. So we thought it's probably best to come on here, explain how we see things from our side of the fence, and then hopefully answer any questions that you may have about the situation. So where we're up to. So initially this thing started, the local lockdowns with Caerphilly, was it best part of 2 weeks ago now?
Yep.
I've lost track of time. And then I think it spread to RCT, to Rhondda and Taff. And then today it's announced that from tomorrow at 6 o'clock they're extending that to Bridgend, to Merthyr, and to Blaenau Gwent as well. So literally, if you look along that M4 corridor, it's pretty much most of it, apart from when you get out sort of Port Talbot, heading west towards Swansea and across to Carmarthenshire. So that's where we're at the moment. So what does a lockdown mean? How does it affect everybody? And where do we go from here? That's what we're going to try and address this evening. So I want to go back to the beginning, to the Caerphilly lockdown. We'll start with Wales and we'll move on to England. So I mentioned this last time I was on. When the Caerphilly lockdown was first announced, it was announced without any solid form of guidance from the Welsh Government. So we had to do what we felt was the right thing to do at that particular moment in time. And at that particular moment in time, we felt with the information that we was privy to, that the best thing to do was to ask everybody who was on park to kindly to vacate and to go back home to Caerphilly. It then transpires about 48 hours after that, the Welsh Government made the guidance available. And it said on there that if you was on holiday, you didn't really have to interrupt your holiday. However, the guidance also stated that if you'd recently arrived on holiday and travelled from the Caerphilly area, then you did pose a higher risk, which sort of makes sense. So then when we moved on to the RCT guidance, or the RCT lockdown, the guidance was exactly the same as a copy and paste of the Caerphilly guidance. So at that point then, we said, well, actually, if people are on park, then we will allow them to see out the rest of the stay. And understandably, that got a few people's backs up from Caerphilly who were asked to leave, and I totally get that, and I understand that, and for that, we are sorry. We put out, but we did what we felt was the best thing to do at the time with the information that we had. And I keep saying this every time I come on. It's not me passing the buck, but the Welsh Government, they do need to improve the lines of communication when they're making these announcements, these big announcements, which are life changing, because it alters people. When I say life changing in terms of people's everyday lives, it has big implications on that. More often than not, the guidance or the meat on the bones is not coming out until 24, 48 hours afterwards. So with the Caerphilly one, that was our first experience of a local lockdown restriction. But then with RCT and subsequently today's announcement for Blaenau Gwent, Bridgend, Merthyr, and where's the other one? Blaenau Gwent, Merthyr. Bridgend, Blaenau Gwent, and Merthyr. Yeah, those are the three there. In addition to Caerphilly and RCT, we're a little bit more experienced now, so we know what we need to be doing as a business. So we've had a lot of letters, emails from people asking questions, and the questions are very specific to the individual. So what people are doing, they're saying, well, look, I live in Caerphilly or I live in RCT. These are my circumstances. Are you able to make an exception? Unfortunately, we can't. And what I want to say to everybody tonight is we understand that everybody has individual circumstances. Yes, Newport is in that as well. Thank you for to one of our viewers just putting Newport into that as well. So we understand everybody has individual circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, we're having some people say, look, I live in RCT, but I don't leave the house. I just want to get in the car and come to the caravan. Unfortunately, we can't allow that to happen because the law is the law and it's there for a reason, and we haven't got the authority to make special exceptions for people's individual circumstances. So I want to be clear with that because we are receiving a lot of comments from people, but unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it at all. It's just one of those things. We can't. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. So what we're saying to everybody is, in all circumstances, we can only refer back to the guidance. You're reading the same guidance as what we are, and we're now in the position, I think, where the guidance is pretty clear. It's pretty straightforward. There's not really much ambiguity there with the Welsh guidance. We'll come to the English one in a minute because that's a whole different kettle of fish. So what I would say to people is read the guidance first. If you're still not sure, then by all means drop us an email and we'll do our best to respond to it. But as a general rule of thumb, if you live in one of those areas that are subject to a local lockdown restriction in Wales, then you can't visit the park. And I say a general rule of thumb, that is the rule. There are no exceptions to it. Now, we don't know how long this is going to last for. I know with the Caerphilly one, they was talking in terms of weeks. I think they're going to review it at the end of September. I think if you were listening to the Chief Medical Officer and the Chief Scientific Officer today on the England side of things, you would probably be getting the vibe that there's more to come nationwide, I think, based on the way things are going. So, yeah, it's a difficult situation. The way I look at it at this moment in time is, you know what, we had a good summer. We managed to get the summer, which, to be honest with you, it was a lot more than what I expected. I was looking at some maps of our parks today because we've asked our park managers to circle on their individual, on their park maps, the caravans that are affected by this. And if you look at, say, Grandre as an example, I can probably count on both hands the caravans that that are not affected.
Not affected.
Not affected.
Wow.
Yeah. That puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
Because Vale Holiday Parks in Wales, most of our customers come from the areas that are now subject to local lockdown restrictions. So if we briefly turn our attentions to across the border, and by the way, I think the Welsh restrictions, I think that's now affecting a quarter of the population in Wales in terms of the restrictions.
Wow.
So it's quite a concentrated area. So if we turn our attentions to England for a bit, so there are lockdown restrictions in England. This started off with places like Dudley, Sandwell, Birmingham. I think that affected sort of like 1.8 million people. I think parts of Liverpool, the Wirral, Merseyside are subject to the same restrictions, as are people living in the northeast and also parts of Lancashire as well. Now, here's the interesting thing: if you're subject to one of those restrictions that are in England, let's take Birmingham as an example, or Sandwell, or even Liverpool. There's no restriction on you leaving that area, and there's no restriction on people going into that area.
It's not actually a lockdown, is it? It's just new restrictions.
Yeah, but the restriction seems to be, this is my interpretation, this is my understanding, the restriction seems to be more about individual households not being able to mix with other households.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. If you're a caravan owner, and I'm not advocating this at all, I'm just giving you my interpretation and how I see things. If you own a caravan and you're from Birmingham, you're from Dudley, you're from Sandwell, you obviously got to follow the restrictions that have been set out because you come under the jurisdiction of the place where you live, and also, more importantly, you come under the jurisdiction of English law. But then when you cross the border into Wales, I'm not sure how that law applies anymore. So if you live in Birmingham and they're saying you can't mix with people outside your household, well, when you cross the border into Wales, I think then the rule of six applies,
Yeah.
Or if you cross the border into Scotland or you go into Northern Ireland, so depending on where you are and where you're going, we're working under different sets of rules, which is completely and utterly confusing in all aspects. So I know we've had some owners say to us, well, look, I live in Liverpool, so I know we've got a big contingent of guests from Liverpool at Park Farm. Does that mean that when I come to the park, I can't leave the caravan? Well, my interpretation, and this is and I'm not a legal expert, I'm not legally minded in any way, shape or form, but just, having read the same guidance that's published for everybody to see, my interpretation of that guidance is when you come into Wales, you're under Welsh law, So I think this is a great opportunity for the respective governments to get together and just come up with a solution that we can all work to, rather than one that's completely and utterly confusing, depending on where you live and where you're going.
Yeah, it says there, for example, because someone asked a question about Wolverhampton, about Carl Tuckley said, I want to book a holiday in October, but Wolverhampton will be in lockdown for tomorrow. Can I book a holiday for the 5th or not? Suzanne Nixon's just replied.
So let's just dissect that a little bit more. So you've got somebody from Wolverhampton who wants to book a holiday, and you've got, say, somebody. So let's say they want to book a holiday for Friday, this Friday coming. So you've got somebody from Wolverhampton who wants to book a holiday, and they both want to come to Claret Bay. So you've got somebody from Wolverhampton, you've got somebody from, I don't know, Bridgend. So my interpretation is the person from Wolverhampton, yes, you can book the holiday. Yes, you can come to Claret, enjoy the facilities, no problem at all. The person from Bridgend, no, you can't. It's yeah. So when we're hearing this term lockdown, there are varying degrees of lockdown depending on where you're from.
See, I understand it as so. Caerphilly, for example, is under lockdown.
Yeah.
Wolverhampton is under restrictions.
Yeah. I think that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah.
So that you're allowed to leave Wolverhampton, but you're just not allowed to do. You've got new restrictions in there.
Yeah. And then we come to the rule of 6, and this is something I need to sort of touch on as well, because it's given us one or two issues in our licensed venues, because the rule of 6 is different again depending on which part of the country you're from, whether you're from England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. If we take the Showboat Club as an example, which is where we're broadcasting to you from now, we've set out the rooms in the club so that no table can take more than 6 persons. So even if you come in and go, well, look, I've got 5 adults in the family and I've got 3 children who are all in the age of 11, which has happened, then even though in terms of the law you can all sit together, we are unable to provide a table for more than 6 persons, because what we found been happening is those tables are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and people, when we're not looking, are trying to put chairs together and increase the capacity of those tables. So what we've said now is, look, we need to draw a line somewhere. We've got to make it now. The rule is no more than 6 at a table, full stop, regardless. Regardless if you're in the same bubble, regardless if there's children or anything on there. I mean, look, there's nothing stopping one family who are more than 6 sitting at neighbouring tables. But in terms of all sitting together, and that is something we can't offer at this moment in time, because it's becoming too ambiguous. It's becoming like it was before the rule, when people were saying, "Oh, we're all in the same bubble." You'd see like a group of 10 or 15, "Oh, we're all in the same bubble." So they removed that by putting the rule of 6 in. But now what's going in? They're going, well, we've got the kids with us, and we've got mum and dad and grandma and granddad, and there may be 9 of us, but 3 of them are under the age of 11, so we're okay. But you're all squashing in then to a small area, and then the next table are doing the same thing, and to an outsider walking in, that outsider could be a licensing officer or somebody from a local authority. The impression it gives is not a good one, and we don't want to go down that road.
Of course not. No, so obviously from Claret, we've got a lot of people asking about the Wolverhampton. Another one's just asked, so we have a sublet from Wolverhampton due to come. Can they still come?
Yeah. I mean, there's no restrictions on, in England. Let's talk about England. In England, there are no restrictions on people travelling across the border to anywhere, really. I think, like Jem said, these are restrictions, like localised restrictions, saying, if me and Jem lived in Wolverhampton and we're next door neighbours, I couldn't go into Jem's house and Jem couldn't come into my house.
It's like Dexy's just said, "Hi Thomas, we have new restrictions in Liverpool, but we are not in lockdown as yet."
No. I think the reality of the situation is that we are possibly heading towards a lockdown situation. I think there's going to be an announcement tomorrow. I think the PM is going to be making an announcement tomorrow. But don't forget, whatever Boris says, it doesn't affect us in Wales. We have to wait for Mark Drakeford to follow suit, which he usually does. So it's all very, very confusing.
Sorry, just reading that one.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions coming in? Or
so we've got a few questions about I was going to say about lockdown, about drain downs. Sorry.
Okay. So what are the questions about drain downs?
The first one. Do you Nicola Davis asked, "Do you recommend we drain down now, just in case of frost, etc.?"
That's a difficult one to answer, and I'll have to take some advice from my 2 brothers who are the experts in that matter. I mean, we're having a bit of an Indian summer at the moment, so we're basking in glorious sunshine across the country.
Until tomorrow.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Is it all changing tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I think what we'll do, I'll take some advice on that, and then once I have that advice, we'll send an email out and we'll let everybody know what the situation is with that. I think maybe at this particular moment in time, it may be a bit premature to start thinking about drain downs. Let's try and be a little bit optimistic and say that there's going to come a time when you can come and visit the caravan again. But certainly, if we start creeping into mid-October and things haven't changed, then I think that's a conversation that we can have from that point onwards. But I will take some advice on that.
Sorry, just another quick one about the drain down. Anne Harrod has said, we were planning to come to Grandray site tomorrow morning to drain down and close for winter. Is this acceptable, or do we have to wait until after lockdown is lifted? But she doesn't actually say where she's from. Yeah,
we need to know where you're from. So if you're in one of the areas that are currently currently in lockdown, then the answer to that is no. If you're in an area that is going to be locked down from 6 o'clock tomorrow night, as long as you're back in your area by 6 o'clock tomorrow night, then yes, that's acceptable. But look, if you can avoid coming to the park, if you're from one of those areas, even though the guidance says you've got until 6 o'clock tomorrow night, it's a little bit like when they're having these sort of like lockdown parties. We know the lockdown's going to happen on Tuesday, so everyone gets together and has one final hurrah. It's the same sort of thing in this respect. Some people may want to come down and have what they perceive to be the last visit to their caravan for a long time. But there are two aspects to this. One is the risk of carrying that virus backwards and forwards between counties, but secondly, what we don't want to do, we don't want people rushing, we don't want people sort of speeding down the roads and down the motorways and that to try and meet that deadline. There's more to life, a lot more to life.
Yeah.
And there's going to come a time, hopefully very soon, when coronavirus will be a thing of the past, because we'll all have a little injection in our arm, and that'll be that.
Nat has a similar question. Although she doesn't say where she comes from. Are we able to drain down and close up, as we're only going to be at our van, although we do have to cross borough lines?
Yeah, I mean, look, we need to know where you're from, but like I say, regardless of where you're from, you need to look at what the guidance is for your particular area and stick to that guidance.
Sorry, just looking for any more questions. Quite a few now about the train downs. Could a borough day be considered for draining down to restrict cross-borough mixing? Just a thought, maybe. That's Nat again.
If you could elaborate on that a little bit more, that would be great. I'm not really sure what you mean by a borough day.
Sue Hunt, hello, Sue, says, if you're coming down and there's more than 6 in a family, would it be possible to book tables so they are adjoining?
It's difficult, Sue, because we tried doing that, and what's happened is that people are not turning up for the booking, so then we're left with empty tables. So I'm going to say no for that at the moment. But look, if you get in good time and you come into the club early enough, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to find between the 3 rooms, because I know Sue, obviously, she's one of our regulars from Claret. Sue's known me since I was that tall. I'm sure we'll be able to find you a table where you can have, if there's 8 of you, and you're part of the same family, we could get adjoining tables, but tables that meet the requirements of social distancing.
Caroline Jones says, hi there, we are coming from North Wales on Friday. I'm assuming during the current situation this will be fine, won't it?
Well, there are no, to my knowledge, there aren't any lockdown restrictions in Gogledd of Cymru in North Wales, so yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Rachel Bailey, again, it goes back to this difference between lockdown and restrictions, but Rachel Bailey